All right, now let's talk about the ideal personnel for the 46 defense. I'm using the Bengals here as an example because they run a 4-3 defense, and that's really what you're looking for as far as the type of defensive ends and linebackers you're going to use in the 46. So we've got Carlos Dunlap here. He's got 83 speed, good acceleration, 87 acceleration, and for defensive ends out of the 46, you're going to want to focus on finesse moves. Um, Basically, that's the pass rushing skill that's going to be able to get around the outside tackles. So Carlos Dunlap has 92 finesse moves, and pursuit is another skill I look at. I like to see it above 80. Basically, it's how fast these players are going to kind of track down the running back or the ball carrier, the quarterback, how fast they're going to kind of accelerate to them. So Carlos Dunlap is really an ideal 46 type defensive end. He's one of the higher rated ones in Madden. And then on the other end, they got Michael Johnson, who's also very similar. Ideally, you'd like to have somebody with at least 80 speed. The higher the better. Speed always matters in pretty much every defensive position in Madden. High acceleration is also key because, you know, if you got a guy with 90 speed, if he has like 70 acceleration, then, you know, that doesn't really matter as far as rushing the quarterback. You're not going to be able to accelerate, you know, 5 or 10 yards. So, you know, to some extent, there's kind of a cap on how valuable speed is at the defensive end position, but I do like to see it above 80. I like to see it, you know, if you could get to 85, that would be great, especially if you're in a CFM and you can level up your guys. So again, focus on finesse moves, and then, you know, after that, then you can focus on block shedding and power moves. For defensive tackles, you're going to have 2 defensive tackles by default on your 46 defense. They've got Geno Atkins and Damata Pico. And so what I like to look for on this position is power moves. So the power move skill is basically described as the skill that determines how well the players can beat double teams. And there in the middle of the field, the center and the guards are going to be double teaming your defensive tackles. So you want to try to max out power moves and also block shedding. And otherwise, you know, there's videos out there that show that strength don't really matter. So I don't really care about strength. I think it's been proven that strength is just kind of a distraction, and it makes you think that, oh, if I have a really strong guy, that they're going to be able to move people around. Well, you can have a 180-pound guy with max strength, and, you know, weight and strength doesn't matter. I forgot the guy's video, the name of the guy that posted it, but it's a really informative video that shows you strength doesn't really matter. It's more about power moves, block shedding, and then finesse moves for any kind of pass rushing position. For the left outside or the outside linebackers, you can, of course, kind of, I like to focus on zone coverage because I run mostly zone. That goes for all my linebackers, but for linebackers, specifically focusing on zone coverage, block shedding, not so much on finesse and power moves. Every now and then, you know, we'll send, if you plan to send a lot of blitzes with your linebackers, then, you know, block shedding is going to be important, and then, of course, power moves and finesse moves. But I would focus on, especially on the outside linebackers, on finesse moves, follow after block shedding. And then, of course, tackle is a key skill. I like to have that at least 80. For the middle linebacker, what's important is you have a good speed guy with some nice acceleration and agility. I'd actually, just looking at this, I mean, I like Trevor Roach's agility and acceleration better than Ray Maluga, but you know, Ray has got a little bit better speed, and the acceleration's about on par. And of course, hit power is another good skill. I mean, you can't always have it all. So you know, if you can have hit power, that's great, but sometimes you just got to take what you can get. I usually use her the middle linebackers, so that's why I like to have a guy with speed. It doesn't really matter what his zone coverage is. If your user and the guy kind of cover in the middle of the field, you know, those skills don't matter as much as just kind of the athletic ability of the player and how fast they are, how fast they accelerate, how agile they are, so you can kind of move them around easier. And that's what I look for in the linebackers. For the cornerbacks, you know, ideally speed. I'm going to look for at least 90 speed cornerbacks. Adam Jones, Drake Patrick, they don't really cut it for me. I'd probably be starting, you know, I'd probably start these two guys actually, William Jackson and Josh Shaw, and then have Arquise Denard there as my nickel back. Just because I don't like in this year's game, you know, you can throw it deep. If you're going up against Brandon Cooks or one of the faster receivers, these guys can just throw it deep on you, and you're going to get beat if you've got an 88 speed guy at your cornerback position. I mean, it's very difficult to stop. So I do value speed on cornerbacks quite a bit. I know most people do. So I'm looking for speed. I'm looking for acceleration, and then agility. I don't run a ton of man. I think man and coverage is flawed in this game. But I do like to mix up man every now and then because it can throw off your opponent. So I focus on zone coverage. Zone coverage would like to be, you know, in the mid 80s, or mid 80s or upper 80s if possible. If you're in your CFM, that's what you want to focus on, leveling up your cornerbacks' zone coverage. And then, of course, play recognition and awareness is going to be key for these cornerbacks reacting to the ball. If you go into the player, you can see some of their traits as well. If you're in a CFM, you can focus on upgrading their traits and getting the play ball in the air aggressive trait. I do notice that those guys with the aggressive trait do tend to make a play on the ball a little bit better. Moving on to the free safety. Speed is important, but not as important as cornerback. I can deal with the speed at 86 or 90 because I'm not sending a ton of blitzes with my safeties. I'm mainly keeping these guys back in coverage. So I'm going to focus on speed. I'm going to focus on zone coverage, of course, because most of the time they are going to be in zone. So, you know, you want your safeties to have like 90 zone coverage. I don't know how many. Let's see, how many safeties are there on the default rosters? So really, I mean, you've got Earl Thomas, Devin McCourty, Harrison Smith. I mean, out of the free safeties on the default rosters, that's who's got 90 zone coverage. Eric Berry. You know, these guys, they're kind of rare. So if you're in CFM, you get a decent speed safety and you want to level them up. Focus on zone coverage, play recognition, awareness, kind of the default setting for the safety positions. And then for the strong safety, the only difference is, you know, in the 46, this guy, he's playing up in the box. The strong safety plays up in the box, so you might not have to have this fastest guy. Like Cam Chancellor, I think, is like the prototype 46 safety. He's got 87 speed, 87 acceleration, but most importantly, you want a guy that's going to get in there and make some tackles. He's got 83 tackle. That is not the highest. He's got the third highest tackle rating of the strong safeties. And then the hit power is what's key. He's got 97 hit power. I mean, that is going to create some fumbles. And that's key. And then block shedding as well. You know, you don't think about a safety having block shedding, but in the 46, this guy's basically like an extra linebacker up there. So you want a guy with some block shedding, and then zone coverage. I mean, he's got it all. This is like the prototype 46 strong safety. So you can use Cam Chancellor as like your model of what you need to develop your guy into, or if you're in Madden Ultimate Team and you're looking for somebody to add to the 46, that would be your ideal candidate. So I think that about covers it as far as personnel. You know, again, speed matters. 46, you're bringing a lot of heat from a bunch of different directions. You need to be able to have linebackers that can blitz. You need to have 4 defensive linemen that can create pressure on their own when you drop your guys back into coverage. And then you need to have cornerbacks that have the ability to cover in zone and also in man coverage sometimes when you mix up your coverages. And that's some of the things I'll be talking about in some other videos. So make sure you check out the channel, make sure you subscribe, and I'll be posting more info about the 46 defense that I like to run.